on, Bears fans? Another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the Designer, Courtney Cronin back at it again. A lot to get into on today's episode. Courtney adding a little bit of insight to the Declan Doyle situation. Is he all in on Chicago, or is there still opportunity out there? We'll talk about that. Also, do we trust Ryan Poles to build this defense the right way? A lot of question marks, but also a lot of different faces in the building. All that and more on today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Today's episode is always brought to you by Underdog. Make picks, win money. Courtney, how are you?
I'm good. The coaching carousel seems to be slowing down a little bit. Like right before we got on, we just saw that Joe Brady was hired as the head coach, or rather, I guess, promoted to head coach in Buffalo. So that leaves 3 openings. I think it's now Arizona, Cleveland, and the Raiders. So I think by the end of the week, we should have this thing settled, more or less.
But by the way, listen. As a black person, I love seeing black folks in great spots. Y'all got to fire that brother in Cleveland. This is unacceptable at this point. We're doing a written essay. You got mugs taking the SATs to be a head coach out here. Unacceptable, Courtney. This process, does it not remind you of when the Bears had a chance to go get the coach of the year and Bruce Arians, and they went, let's do a fake press conference? Like, unbelievable what we're seeing in Cleveland. So absolutely hilarious on that part.
They just keep trying to reinvent, and make themselves sound like the smartest people in the room. And they do have some smart people. I think Andrew Berry, he's got a Wall Street background, finance background. He's a very smart guy. But this is the same organization that tried to make Moneyball work in football with Paul D. Podesta all those years until they realized, wow, this is so bad. We got to get this guy out of the building. And, yeah, they keep stepping in it by trying to convolute this thing in an already convoluted situation with a tenuous situation for any head coach coming into a bad roster, a team that won 5 games last year, and clear divide between ownership, the front office, and what the coaching staff is going to be able to do. But yeah, 1 of 32 jobs, somebody's going to take it.
Courtney, listen, when you make something too nerdy for Mike McDaniels, when he goes, I'm out, bro. Like, you're wilding over there, dog. They got to get that right. But Brown's going to Brown. And the good thing is the Chicago Bears no longer Chicago Bear in that manner. They do things right here. In fact, so much so that we've got coaches that it seems like teams are trying to poach. Of course, Eric Bieniemy going back to Kansas City, already a done deal. And Declan Doyle, the next name of interest. And I thought, talking with you before the show started, you added some insight to the Diana Rossini tweet that came out yesterday about Declan Doyle, because how it came off, and not that she misreported anything, but it definitely came off where she said Bears OC Declan Doyle has withdrawn his name from consideration for the Eagles offensive coordinator vacancy. Per sources, Doyle opts to remain in Chicago, working with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. Sounds very much like, y'all got too many problems over there.
Sure.
I don't want this job. I'm going back to Chicago where I feel safe. But then we immediately hear the Ravens reach out, and it seems like maybe this was more the Eagles telling him that he's not ready for this job yet.
I think there's a number of reasons why you'd withdraw your name from consideration. Certainly, it could open up your candidate pool even more. I don't think that's required to do that. I think teams would, if they think you're a candidate, if they think you're somebody that they want to have in the building, they would ask to interview you regardless. But from my understanding in digging in on this last couple of days, the Eagles want somebody who has play calling experience, because they have gone through a revolving door at offensive coordinator now every single year.
Every year.
And it's affecting what this offense can do. The drop off from Kellen Moore to Kevin Patullo this year was really notable. And that was his first time calling plays. I don't think that they want a retread of that. Yeah. Even though that was somebody that was in the organization for a long time as their passing game coordinator before he got promoted to OC. Like, we've seen this happen. Brian Johnson takes over for Shane Steichen. Brian Johnson's out after a year.
Yeah.
Kevin Patullo takes over for Kellen Moore. Kevin Patullo is out of that job after a year. Now, I know there was some stuff like, could he remain with the organization? Like, that's moot to our conversation because he's out as the offensive coordinator. If you're Declan Doyle, knowing that you are at the absolute beginning of your journey, you are one of the brighter minds doing this, you're young, you're going to have opportunities. You're not just going to jump at the first thing that's out there, going into a place where the pressure is going to be on you to win in year one and to coordinate an offense, to call plays within this offense that takes time to learn how to do. And not saying that there's other places that might make it easier It's obviously a very hard job. That's why there's 32 offensive coordinators out there, or 32 guys that call plays. Not all 32 of them are great at it. So
Yeah.
I think he'd want to wait for the right situation, not just quarterback, not just the offense, not just the talent, but being in the right situation that's going to give him time to learn how to be a play caller. Similar with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson ends up, behind the scenes 2021 when Anthony Lynn gets that, when kind of gets pushed out of that role as offensive coordinator. Dan Campbell takes over play calling in Detroit. Ben's behind the scenes helping that thing through. And then early on in 2022, there weren't real expectations for Detroit to do anything. Obviously, they end up, a game shy of the playoffs that year, but that allowed Ben Johnson time to install his system, teach it to his players, and have a pulse for what it's like to call plays. I think Declan Doyle will eventually get a situation like that while continuing, whether the Ravens thing works out, whether he stays in Chicago. This will not be the last time we hear his name surface for jobs. He's really smart. Like, that's the thing. A lot of times with coaches who do not call plays, who are just, figureheads for, I'm the offensive coordinator, but I'm not the one doing the day-to-day. Like, he is doing the day-to-day. He's the one he is Ben Johnson during the week. Every player that you talk to has mentioned that he's trying to make what Ben Johnson's message is to players on game day sound the same, feel the same, come across the same when he's the voice during the week, when Ben's got a million other things to do. So I think if it ends up being he stays here for another year, gets to work with Caleb Williams, gets to become more seasoned in what he's doing, I think it can only be beneficial for him.
So the Philly situation seemed like it. You're right, first date, right? You go on a first date and y'all both realize, this ain't for us either. Like we both need to.
But it sounds like his interview, according to Jeremy Fowler, there were a lot of people who were very impressed with Declan Doyle within that building, which is not surprising because of what his reputation has been from the comments that we've heard from Sean Payton about him, how he's, somebody that he handpicked to go with him from New Orleans after, Sean left and had time off, and then said, I'm going to go back and get him, bring him out with me to Denver. And then what he's been here in Chicago, like, clearly he's doing all the things right that he has to do. And it's just a matter of time before he's going to get the more opportunity and more experience to, do this in his own eyes, or in the vision that he has of what an offense should be like and how it should be called.
Yeah, I think he's destined for a play caller's role either this year or next year. It'll be interesting to see kind of when that opportunity arises. He did get reached out to by the Ravens. They want to interview him. And I mean, listen, if you can't get the Philly situation where you've got all those weapons there, a very confusing situation.
The pressure's going to be on whoever's taken over that job in Philly to win right now. And I also think, kind of circling back to the top of the show, Joe Brady took that job in Buffalo. Brian Daboll was also interviewing for the Buffalo head coaching job, but is also a candidate for the OC job in Philly.
Yep.
I think that you get a feel, your agent gets a feel, you get a feel in the building for who's, like, what's the tier list look like for the top candidates. If Declan Doyle is not a top candidate, then he's within his right to be like, thank you, but I'm going to pass on this opportunity for now. Right. It was great getting a chance to interview. When they may have their sights set on, we might be finding out here by the time the show's done recording that somebody else has taken that OC job after they cast as wide of a net as they felt that they needed to. I just keep going back to I don't think any knock on where Declan is right now. No. I just think that it's, a chance for him to get through the interview process, because he's never interviewed for an OC job before, see what it's like, and then see how far he has to go to then land one of those jobs one day.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that. All the situations are really, you got to win pretty quickly there, right? Like there is no Joe Brady, you get time here in Buffalo. You got to make Josh Allen a Super Bowl champion within the next couple of years, or you're probably on the way out as well. And maybe Josh Allen's on the way out at that point, right? You talk about Philly, right? Philly's won the Super Bowl and has been at the top of the mountain. And you went out in the first round this year, you got to get back. I think, he got reached out by the Ravens. That's a job where Lamar's got to get it done. You got to at least get to an AFC title game, right? Like these are high pressure situations, and not to say they're not good situations for you to be in with the player and the personnel and stuff like that. But are you ready to go in and be a win now offensive coordinator? That's the one thing that we don't know yet, because we haven't seen him as much of a play caller throughout the week. There are a couple of times where you see Ben Johnson standing there and you're like, okay, maybe Declan called that play because a play got in clearly and Ben didn't have the sheet in front of his mouth. But for the most part, Ben Johnson doing the play calling here. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with Declan. I would love to see him stay because I think the continuity is going to be so important for this team. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Like I said earlier, today's episode brought to you by Underdog. Make sure you download the app today. Sign up with the promo code CBP to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code CBP. Playing Underdog, so easy. Just pick your favorite player, whether they'll go higher or lower on stats like touchdown, rushing, receptions, and more. Get them right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. So again, download the app today. Sign up with the promo code CBP to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code CBP. EOQ, the disclaimer. Must be 18 years or older, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or over in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
I love that my husband's so handy. He leaves more money for the important stuff.
Whoa.
Gosh darn it, Steve.
Ow. Don't be like Steve. Call Avondale Roofing. DIY is for Pinterest, not your roof.
Welcome back into the Chicago Bears podcast. Pat the Designer, Courtney Cronin in the building. Today's episode also brought to you by the Advantage Dealer Group. Find your next Chevy, Toyota, or Acura. Drive off in under 60 minutes and they'll make your first car payment. Also brought to you by the Hard Rock Casino in Northern Indiana. Las Vegas style gaming, just 30 minutes from Soldier Field. Exit 6 right off I-80-94. Might be a lot closer to the new stadium if things go the Indiana route. We'll see what ends up happening there. But before we get anywhere near stadium talk this offseason, the big conversation, of course, Courtney, that we're seeing happen now is how do the Bears go about fixing this defense? And I think it's even with what we saw last offseason, I wonder if we have to ask the question, how much trust do you put in Poles to get this defense built the right way? Because there were a lot of additions made last year to that defense. Now, some that we didn't expect to go out there, but you re-signed Kyler Gordon. You wanted to keep him in the building. You added Grady Jarrett. You signed Dio Adangbo. Like, those are big money pieces that you added to this defense. And if we're being honest, outside of takeaways, they got worse in a lot of metrics. Where's the trust level for you right now that Ryan Poles is going to get this right with the new eyes in the building that he has?
Well, I think that the idea that pass rush is the most important priority for this team this offseason, I think it's changed a little bit because we will judge Ryan Poles most harshly on what happens with the offensive line at left tackle. That all of a sudden, like when that thing went down, we find out that Ozzie Trapillo's injury is a very long one that's going to require a lot of time for him to get back.
Yeah.
I think that changed what the priority number one has to be in the offseason because the rest of the offensive line is set. You have continuity. You have stability. You cannot allow the left tackle spot to be a revolving door. And I don't think the answer is on the roster. If the answer was on the roster, Theo Benedette would have been starting in that game against the Los Angeles Rams at left tackle. You wouldn't have been moving Joe Thuney over. So I think more than pass rush, more than what they've done on the defensive side of the ball, which we can get to, that's what we will ultimately look at in the offseason. Did he fix this? Did he put, like a big, not, I won't even call it Band-Aid because a Band-Aid seems like a short-term fix. This might be a longer term thing because of how long Ozzie's going to be out. But did he make sure that didn't snowball into ruining all the progress that they've created up front? That's number one. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, the confidence that you have in him to be able to identify the right pass rushers to fix the weak link here, I can understand why people might look at this and say, hey, well, they threw a lot of money at a problem last year. It just didn't work. Which is true. Like they threw a lot of money at Dio Adangbo. I think they overpaid. The results would say that they overpaid because the guy played 8 games, had 1 sack, and was a better run defender than he was at getting after the quarterback. And then Grady Jarrett kind of overpaid for a guy who was a great player for them, a great locker room guy, but he's not the same player that he was 3-4 years ago in Atlanta. The guy who was a perennial Pro Bowler. I know we can argue about like whether that is a metric that you want to even use for people, if it's important anymore, but no, like they tried last year and I think it was a C+ effort by the time it was all said and done because they saw big names, they saw potential, they struck at it, they struck out in a lot of respects. So what confidence should fans have that he's going to get it right this time around? You go back to what he said last week about how, doing the thing that everybody wants you to do might not necessarily be what you should do because you might get yourself in trouble by overpaying, by shooting, your shot too hard on one thing, putting your eggs in one basket on one player, and that might not yield the result that you want. But I just feel like, given where this defense is right now, he knows that he has to take a big swing because his triple that he went for last year, no one ever viewed Dio, Dangbo, and Grady Jarrett as a home run. No one did. But that was viewed as, okay, they hit a nice triple there, since we use baseball analogies to determine how well you do on something. I think that you have to go all in and try to get the splash free agent defensive end, just as you would a quarterback if that was the necessary position that you had to fill in your roster. Because he's told us about the premier positions, defensive line, edge rusher, pass rusher is always one of the top 2 or 3 that he will mention as ones that you invest in. And it might not necessarily be Max Crosby, and that's okay. I think that there are going to be a lot of teams that are in on Max Crosby, and the Bears, if they're one of them, great. But this is something you don't just take one stab at this offseason. This is something where you end up going all in the draft too. What your draft pick is going to be, late 20s. It's a prime spot to get somebody. They haven't drafted a true defensive end pass rusher since Shea McClellan. I mean, you can throw Leonard Floyd in there, but he was an outside linebacker. I don't care what it is. You have to use premium draft capital to go get this player. And that's how we judge Ryan Poles in the totality of what he has to do in the offseason, because this is a roster that's ready to contend. They just showed you they were 3 points away from being that team in the divisional playoffs.
100%.
That's how, and I don't know. There are a lot of people I think who have changed, both have played both sides of the fence on Ryan Poles this year. They don't like what he did here, but they're good with what he did here. The results showed you weeks 1 through 2, it was something else. It was bad and looked terrible. And then a couple weeks later, okay, where everybody loves Colston Loveland, you can't win in season, but over the course of the year, he had a good year when the draft picks hit, especially how many he had to play this year. So I think that should give him the benefit of the doubt. But until we see some of the marquee positions, left tackle and edge rusher, get filled with options that you are actually excited about and think are actual home runs, the jury's going to still be out on how we view him by the time we're talking next season.
You got to listen. You got the surprise season that is the fun season. Now you got to make it real. Now you have to make it where it lasts for years to come here. And the best way for you to do that is by going out and spending good draft capital and getting a great piece. Right now, the one thing that I will say that last year's draft felt very different. And not to say that you were sitting there going, Ryan Poles has no control in this room, but it definitely felt like Ben Johnson had his hand in a lot of the pieces that came to Chicago. When you saw Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren, it was like, oh, okay, you didn't go with the obvious name there. You went with the guy from Michigan that's been banged up. What did you see that made you go this route? Oh, you went Luther Burden at wide receiver. Why are we going wide receiver? You eventually get to, left tackle, which we all thought was going to be the most important position that they were going to try to attack in the draft. They addressed it a little bit later. It truly felt like Ben Johnson and his staff had a lot of hands in the draft decisions that went down, which you should. You need the coach to have the players that he wants to succeed to go out there and make plays. I feel like with that, having Dennis Allen on the defensive side, and we didn't see much out of Shamar Turner this year, saw nothing out of Ruben Hippolyte this season, but we didn't see much out of Shamar Turner. I thought that was one where he started to show you a little bit, but then, of course, the injury happens. But that's the guy on there on the sideline that went out and found you, Trey Hendrickson, who many people are saying we need to go out there and sign, who found you Khalil Mack, where everybody was like, he's too undersized to play at this level. And he ends up being one of the most dominant edge rushers of his generation. So you feel like with the coaches having so much more input, there are a lot more answers afforded to you, especially going via the draft. But if you do want to quick fix this, I think your championship windows are open, Courtney. That usually leads to teams going out and saying it's time to spend big money on X, Y, and Z. You got to fix some of the big money you spent in mistaken positions.
And that's
Iowa Dangbo's probably not going anywhere. Grady Jarrett's probably not going anywhere. Who leaves the team for you to bring in that big name free agent or that big name trade if you were to go Max Crosby?
You have to do some significant reworking of the roster, and it's not just parting ways with guys that are unrestricted free agents in a month and a half. It's maybe moving on from players who were pricey acquisitions for you, guys that you thought would end up staying. And I know that his name's going to come up quite a bit over the next couple of months, because if you do the math, you have to like rework. Okay, well, if this player's coming in, they can't hold on to this player's salary. Is Montez Sweat a guy? Like, I know that he had a great season.
Yeah.
By his standards, like his standards are never going to be like double-digit sacks. I think is on like the high end of what we expect from Montez Sweat, because there's moments where he disappears, moments where he's active around the quarterback. It doesn't lead to the sack numbers. Yes, sacks are not everything, but you expect more from a guy who's paid $24.5, $25 million a year, whatever the number is.
Right.
So is he somebody that could be the surprise move that of a guy that they move on from to upgrade the pass rush by bringing somebody in free agency, a trade, and doubling back in the draft to try to get that player? Because let's not kid ourselves. This isn't just the edge rusher spot that we're looking at. Has Gervon Dexter done anything the last 3 years that leads you to believe that he's your answer at 3 technique? Andrew Billings is probably gone. So you have 2 interior positions. If Shamar Turner's able to fill one of those, if he's healthy, great. You just spent a high draft pick on him. You drafted him day 2. So if he can be that guy, great. But they've got a lot of work to do up front. I think actually like more work than they've had to do in the last couple of years, when it felt very obvious that that's where their attention was turning. So much so it led to a midseason trade and then going back 3 different times last year in free agency and the draft to get guys. But I don't think this is a one-stop fix of, okay, you handled it in free agency, you're good. I think they're going to have to spend multiple draft picks to try to fix this, on top of resources that you use by letting other pieces go, not re-signing certain pieces, and, you know, maybe trying to draft and develop. Like, obviously with the safety spot, you can't bring 2 safeties back. I mean, I know that there's 4 that are up for free agency when you include Elijah Hicks and Jonathan Owens. They're not very expensive. If you want to bring them back, sure.
That's fine.
It's fine. But maybe you end up using a day 2, because you're not drafting a safety round 1, like a day 2, early day 3 pick on a safety, and letting one of those other guys walk to draft and develop, like you did with Jaquan Brisker. If he's not the guy, if it's Byard, whoever it is, there's options now where I think you can start building from within to be able to free up the resources to go spend elsewhere starting next month.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. To me, I think there's listen, I'm very fine with Ben Johnson basically not being in the draft room till day 3. Just let Dennis Allen get all his picks in there and get as much on this defense as you can, because I do think you're going to, even if you go sign somebody, right? Even if you go sign Trey Hendrickson, that's not a long-term fix.
No, that's like
that
2
is
years
a patchwork fix.
Mm-hmm.
You need long-term fixes on this team, and that happens through the draft. When you look at how much the Rams have spent, how much San Fran has spent, how much the Eagles have spent, and you go, well, they're spending all this money. How are they still competitive teams? Because they've been hitting in the draft. They found pieces that you can plug in and say, that's a really good piece that we're going to have on the long term. As soon as your money's up, thank you for playing the work version of our game. We're going to move on here.
Yeah.
And the Bears did some of that with some of the pieces they have this year. Good to hear Nahshon Wright making a Pro Bowl. I think he deserved it. Didn't get the initial nod, but, you know, you lead the NFL in takeaways. You deserve some kind of recognition for it. Didn't get the All-Pro. At first, didn't get the Pro Bowl. Gets the Pro Bowl nod here. I thought it was absurd he didn't make the Pro Bowl. All-Pro, I guess I get a little bit more.
For sure.
I also think it's absurd that somehow Shedeur Sanders is in the Pro Bowl now.
Yeah.
What are we doing, Courtney?
So,
can we just abolish these at this point?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about the Pro Bowl that I think needs to be said, because I just got a text that I was sent because we were talking about this on Clinton and Friends. I just got off air and came here.
Yeah.
And we spent a significant portion of the show this morning talking about Pro Bowls and what they're worth. And when we talk about players, because there are a lot of people say, oh, well, you're an idiot if you view Pro Bowls as meaning anything. When we talk about a man's achievement in football, somebody who's played, it's how many Super Bowls did they won, X number of All Pros, X number of Pro Bowl bids.
Yeah.
Always. Pro Bowls factor into financial compensation when you go to the negotiating table with the team and your agent and your representation. Nahshon Wright is about to do that, whether it's with the Bears or someone else. So good for him that he's going to have Nahshon Wright come a Pro Bowler next to his name, because that is what is determined in a lot of contracts for escalators, for incentives. Like if you make certain number of Pro Bowls, you get a financial kickback on that. Now, if we don't actually give a shit about the Pro Bowl anymore, and if we don't care about its value, then the NFLPA, when they ratify the CBA in 2030 with the league, they need to say, we are no longer we do not want Pro Bowls to have any sort of financial benefit tied to them. So they can't be a part of contractual language. If that's how we want it to be, and to not have any value of this other than, hey, it's just an exhibition game. Like guys go for the free trip to, where is it this year? It's in San Francisco. Like it moves around.
I think.
Yeah, it was in Orlando. It's no longer a free trip to Hawaii. Certain players don't want to go. Like that's all fine. But let's get on the same page about it, because the whole Shedeur Sanders thing feels like such a farce for something that actually used to mean something.
Yeah.
And we don't know. I'd love for Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, the other alternates that could have been chosen, but were not. I'd love to hear them say, I said no. That's why Shedeur Sanders got to say yes. Because until then, it looks like the optics of it are that the league passed over other people who were way more qualified from a statistical measure than Shedeur Sanders to get in. But if Shedeur got in because other people said no, and because, like, what's he supposed to do? Say no himself? No, that'd be ridiculous. You can't blame him for that. But is he deserving of it? Absolutely not. Is Nahshon Wright, in a completely different conversation, deserving of it? Absolutely yes. That will help him come to the negotiating table. But there's a separate conversation that needs to be had about, what are we doing with the Pro Bowl? Should it carry nearly as much weight as it does when we don't really value it anymore?
And I think that's the part that I wonder about, right? Like you bring up the financial gain that could come from it. And I do think that means something for Nahshon Wright. But clearly there's a bunch of people looking at the Shedeur situation that don't care about what it means for you financially, don't care about what it means for you in the contract situation, because it made it all the way to Shedeur. I can't imagine that the NFL went straight to Shedeur with 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions and said, yeah, the number one guy said no because he's going to the Super Bowl in Drake May. So we're here to talk to you and see if you want to be the quarterback now. Like, there had to be a list of guys that all went, I don't care about the Pro Bowl. I don't care about the financial
gain. The other
gain.
quarterbacks that were the finalists in voting. So they would have had to have said, no. That's the only logical way you could think about it here, unless the NFL, this is truly like a conspiracy.
We know it's going to get
hey,
clicks.
we need eyeballs on this product because it's not fun to watch anymore for fans, unless you want to watch flag football and a skills competition, which no slight on flag football. Obviously, it's going to be an Olympic sport. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. But in the Pro Bowl, guys don't want to get hurt. Guys want their time off. Like if these other players passed up on it, I'd love to hear from them. I'd love to have at least some sort of transparency there, because right now it looks like the NFL went with something that's going to get them eyeballs, and that feels really scummy if that's the case.
Well, listen, far be it from the NFL to be a little scummy every now and then. But we'll see. I was surprised. At this point, I'm done with all-star games altogether. And I know, like Danny always says, he's like, they're for kids. They weren't for kids back in the day. Like, I get it. Kids were the exciting part for like the dunk contest and stuff like that. But I watched all-star games with my uncles. I watched the MLB all-star game every year with my dad. Like, it wasn't just kids sitting down there going, oh, this is entertaining. Like, my uncle was jumping out of his seat when we saw the Dwight Howard dunk contest, when we saw the Zach LaVine dunk contest. Like, these things used to mean something. And listen, far be it, I know it's a different sport, far stretch. I blame LeBron. I blame LeBron for all of them. I think once LeBron did it, everybody was like, we don't need these things. They're not important. I blame LeBron. Hey, man, appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love as always. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is going to happen with Declan Doyle? Does he stay? Does he go? Do you trust polls to rebuild this defense? And what are your feelings on all-star games? Stay tapped in with us with everything we have here on the Chicago Bears podcast. For Courtney Cronin, this your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bed down. One love. Peace. LeBron's fault.